In the next decade, jobs grow. But the real story is hiding in plain sight. What the data reveals is what we are calling the displacement illusion. It is not about jobs disappearing. It is about something far more precise. When you see it, you cannot unsee it. The answer is in the data, and it is not what most people think. This is Data Atlas Global, where the world's data tells the stories that headlines miss. For things are true about AI and jobs that the mainstream conversation gets completely wrong. First, but the countries most exposed to AI are not the poorest. They are the richest. Second, if you're planning your career based on job loss headlines, you're already reacting to the wrong threat. Third, you think this is about automation replacing people. It is not. And the fourth, this is the displacement illusion. The belief that automating tasks eliminates entire jobs. But the data shows something very different underneath. It is the pattern behind all three threads. And when you see it, it explains everything. But before we get to the displacement illusion, the data found something first that changes the picture. On the surface, AI looks like a job destruction story. Machines replace workers. Roles disappear. But actually, zoom out to the data and the picture shifts completely. Here is what gets missed, and the cost is personal. If you're making career decisions based on fear of job loss, you're already working with the wrong map. This is not new. In the 1800s, Britain controlled industrial machinery and controlled global manufacturing. In the 1900s, the United States controlled oil and controlled economic expansion. Now, AI is the new general-purpose technology. But instead of replacing entire systems overnight, it reshapes them from the inside. In 2024, 40% of global jobs were exposed to AI. Hold that number. Here is what everyone gets wrong about it. Exposure does not mean elimination, but that misunderstanding is exactly what the displacement illusion exposes. And the real picture, when you actually look, is the opposite of what most people assume. By 2030, 170 million jobs will be created, 92 million displaced. But actually, what makes this remarkable is not the net gain. It is how uneven that shift is beneath the surface. Most analysis focuses on totals, but totals hide distribution. For context, 41% of employers plan to reduce headcount. Where AI can automate tasks, that is not job loss. That is job reshaping. If you are entering the workforce now, the roles you expect may already be shrinking. And by the time it becomes obvious, those pathways will already be closed. But that number alone does not show what the data found underneath it. In advanced economies, 60% of jobs face AI exposure. However, the figure that matters is what happens next. Half of those jobs benefit, half face risk. But actually, this split is not random. It tracks skill level. For context, high-skill roles gain productivity. Low-skill repetitive roles lose bargaining power. The gap is widening. If you're in a role that can be partially automated, your job does not disappear, but your leverage does. And most people will not notice this shift until salaries stop growing. However, the figure that actually shifts the strategic picture is still ahead. AI can automate 57% of US work hours. Here is what everyone thinks that means. Jobs disappear, but actually, that is not what the number measures. It measures tasks. For context, over 70% of skills are used in both automatable and non-automatable work. That means jobs do not vanish. They fragment. If you're in job today, parts of your work will be replaced. Other parts will expand, and the outcome depends on which side grows faster. Instead of stopping here, the data goes further. 51% of organizations say AI is reducing entry-level hiring. But actually, this is where the shift becomes visible. Entry-level roles are training pipelines. They teach future skills. If those roles shrink, the entire career ladder changes. For context, junior developers now face 129% higher unemployment than 2023. That is not a temporary dip. That is structural. If you are early in your career, the hardest job is no longer your first job. It is getting your first opportunity at all. But before the verdict, there is a twist in this data that almost nobody has named yet. Here is what almost everyone gets wrong about this, even experts. Remember that 57% number? Automation potential is not job destruction. Here is what it actually means when connected together. While the world focused on jobs disappearing, AI was quietly rewriting jobs from the inside. This is the displacement illusion in practice. Tasks vanish, jobs evolve, and the people who adapt move up. The ones who do not stay stuck. OECD tracked this for a decade. Zero net job destruction, but high-risk jobs grew slower, 6% versus 18%. But here's the real split. The workforce is not shrinking. It is sorting. If you're not adapting, you are not losing your job immediately. You're being left behind slowly, and most people will not realize which side they are on until it is too late. So, is AI destroying jobs? The data gives a clear answer. But actually, that is the wrong question. The real question is, who is adapting fast enough? The displacement illusion is not a prediction. It is already happening. Jobs are not disappearing. They are dividing. And if you understand what that means, this becomes personal in every country, every industry, every career. If you're learning new skills, you move forward. If you are not, your role slowly shrinks around you. The data has already decided. The world is just catching up. The one thing we do not know yet, which side most people will end up on. What do you think? When you subscribe to Data Atlas Global, you get this investigation every week. Next, which countries are preparing for this shift and which are not? Like if you want us to go deeper. See you next week.